911 dispatch, what is your emergency?
I keep getting hang up calls. Yesterday, day before, it's driving me crazy. It's like static, but I can almost hear someone.
What the hell? Charlie 5, you copy? I got a couple of calls from this address.
I pressed the button my daughter gave me.
I was wondering if you could just swing by and do a quick, just a pop in or a quick check.
What was that last call you sent me? It was bad. Really bad.
Gonna get a little granny action? That's funny, Greg.
Welcome to the Downing Cut. I'd like to welcome Earl Gray. Earl began his arts training in Seattle, honing his voice under maestro David Kyle and mastering his method acting with David Gilmour at the Moore Theater. After furthering his studies in Los Angeles, he returned to the Seattle theater scene where he excelled in various roles and also appeared in numerous commercials and modeling campaigns. Welcome, Earl Gray.
Thank
How are you?
Thank you. Boy, I haven't heard that in a while. That modeling was quite some time ago.
Well, tell me, so I know you're a man of many talents, and there's acting, directing, modeling, producing, filmmaking. Which came first, and then how did you enter into that field?
What came first was modeling. I actually, I had a guy who was cutting my hair. I had quite long hair at the time, and he did hair shows. And he asked me to go to hair shows and have him cut my hair. They like people with long hair so they can cut it and all that. So I did that. And from that, I got approached by a modeling agency in town that no longer exists. And they signed me up. And so I did, J.C. Penney's commercials. I was pretty buff at the time. So lots of treadmills and weight machines and underwear, stuff like that. Yeah, so that.
Wait. Okay, I'm going to pause you. There's two questions I want to know. How long was your hair? Was it past your shoulders?
Yeah, I could grab it behind my back when I first started with him.
Oh my gosh. Okay. The second question is, where can I find these images of you?
I have them somewhere in a shoebox. This was 1976 or so, 75, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah.
Long before IMDb, long before any of that stuff, So I never really did a scrapbook or anything like that, but I did save some stuff. And then I got.
Did you sign autographs and give them to the ladies?
And then I got on KOMO. They used to have a show on, I forget the lady's name. She's since passed recently, where it was a show about the soap operas. And so they had a promo contest thing where you get on there and then they give you lines and you do a little soap opera scene with no, prior anything. And I did that and I won. And the prize was they send you down to LA. And as it turns out, at the exact same time, a good friend of mine who I also played music at the time, a guitar player in the band I was in, moved to LA, and his girlfriend, who later became his wife, was an agent. And so when I was down there, she had me do headshots and all that stuff, and said, look, if you're going to really do this, you got to live down here. And so I had gotten a couple of parts and I flew down for commercials and stuff. One was for Wonder Bread. And I remember that. Yeah.
Nice.
And so I ended up moving down there. And I was down there for about 5 years. So doing commercials. Never did.
That kind of opened up your acting then,
Yeah,
right?
it was, that was all completely new to me. That was, I had done theater stuff up in Seattle. So I mean, I had done acting,
Okay.
but I hadn't really considered, television or movie acting. I was just theater. And I had done quite a bit before it was probably about a year and a half, something like that, before I actually moved down there, and in the interim, I was taking acting lessons and singing lessons and doing theater. And I did a 1-man show, 90-minute 1-man show, which was at the time terrorizing. A playwright
Yeah.
approached me to do it, and I did it, and we won an award. And so that was another one of those things that stayed for several weeks because of that. Stayed as a run for several weeks. And so, I was doing acting, but I wasn't doing any of that kind of acting. And so I was down in LA for a while. I did virtually everything I did was commercials. There was some lines, but it was all commercials. I never did any narrative work while I was down there at all. And that's kind of why I moved back, because I missed that. I was financially, I was doing okay, but I wanted to do that and play music and that sort of stuff. So I moved back to Seattle, and family, and all that too.
When did you enter into, because I know from our previous conversation, you went into tech. When did you enter into that field?
I entered in that field about when I came back here. So that was about 1980 or so, 80, 81, 82, somewhere around there. And again, real strange happenstance sort of thing. Both my parents have multiple degrees, really smart people. My mom went through medical school, and in her internship decided she didn't want to be a doctor. And at that point, World War II was breaking out and they needed radar people. So she went and got a quick degree in electronics and became a radar instructor because she was a woman. And my dad was one
Holy
of her
smokes.
students. And so they were both into avionics. Yeah, they're
Oh.
both into avionics.
Yeah.
Electronics for airplanes. And another deal came up when I came back. There was a deal at the time that IBM, the straight-laced pinstripe suit hat people, they had a deal where they were giving a class for 30 people. You take an aptitude test. If you make that, you get in the class. They were going to take the top 2 people in the class and give them jobs at the end. And they don't pay you for this 30 days, but then you get a job at IBM.
Wow.
So I took that class, and I ended up, me and another guy were the top 2. And so I had basically done a degree's worth of electronics from my parents teaching me at night while I was going to school during the day for this 30 days. So I was catching up the whole time. And got a job at IBM. That's how it started. But they were so straight-laced at the time. You had to wear a hat and a white shirt and tie and all that. I had to cut my hair. And that was fine. I knew that was going to happen. But at the time, I was working on key punch machines, which are mechanical nightmares, and all these card sorters and all this stuff, right? Which is grease and dirt and all that. And you wore a white shirt. So I remember I had all my white shirts had a black stripe down the back because you're always bending over, and then I'd always have to tuck in my shirt.
Oh
Yeah, and
man.
so I left them fairly shortly and went to work for a company called Bally, who made pinball machines. You've probably seen them. And at the time,
That's
they were
awesome.
jumping into video games as well. And so I, after a short while, became an R&D technician for Bally, where I would set things up, for the people that were programming and making all this stuff, the electronic engineers and all that. I kind of set it up to work and make it all work,
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And did that for a while, and then just kept going with that. The funniest thing is though, I kind of got bored with that. It got to be a little repetitious. So I was living in West Seattle at the time, and a friend of mine approached me and said that, hey, I forgot. I had added on to my house. I bought a house, added 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and attached the garage that was detached. It was one of those old houses in West Seattle, and I kind of redid the whole thing.
Nice.
And so a
Nice.
friend
Yeah.
contacted me and said, "Hey, there's this old house that's been framed up and sitting for 10 years. What do you think about buying it and then finishing it and selling it?" And I mean, that sounds a pretty good idea. The guy that owned it he kind of lost it in Vietnam, and it had sat there. And we came to find out that the city of Seattle had condemned it and was going to tear it down and charge him $10,000 at the time to tear it down. So we talked to the guy. He was crazy, but talked him into selling it to us, and bought it and talked the city into not condemning it, tearing it down, giving us 90 days to frame it in and do all the stuff. Well, I've been working on this thing for a year, and the guy across the street from me would bring me coffee in the winter and beer in the summer and all that. And we'd talk. And when I got close to getting done, it needed some electronics. It's a long story, but it needed this thing called a power venter that would vent with a fan the exhaust fumes and shut down the gas valve if it got too hot, because it was really close to the sidewalk and all this other stuff, right? So he saw me doing.
Yeah.
I tried to get somebody to do this. In fact, we had sold the house, and I tried to get the plumber to do it because gas valves and all that. And he said, "No, that's electrical work." And I tried to get the electrician. We had done all the work, but they were doing all the finish work now because we had it sold. And I wanted to get it done quick. And the electrician said, "No, that's plumbing work. I don't do that." So let me draw it up. Got it approved. Went and got the stuff. Was putting it in. He happened to come over, and he said, "Wow, that you should really get into control systems." And I had no idea what that was. And he said, "I need a control system because I want a 3-stage fish smoker that starts off hot, then gets cold and gets colder, but still smokes." And he explained it to me, and I said, "Yeah." And I drew it out on a napkin and said, "Go get the stuff, and I'll help you with it." And so we did it. He ended up at the end of that said, "You know what? You need to be in controls, and it's this burgeoning field. You need to do this." And he said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to pay for a night class for you to take. Just take the class." So I took the class. At the end of the class, the guy that was running it was the company owner's son, and he offered me a job. And what it was a new field, which was networked controllers, which are like PCs but smaller, but networked controllers that control airplanes and buildings and drones and campuses and all sorts of things. And so that was at the very beginning. That was 1989. And it was just beginning. In fact, I was the first guy they sent back east to go to the school to learn all the network computing stuff, I got into that.
Were you acting during this whole entire time?
Yeah, I was.
And doing gigs?
In fact, that was part of the deal where I told him, I explained to him, that that I was doing all this stuff. And so there was times when I needed to jump out and do an audition or this and that, and that's kind of why I was staying where I was at, because they allowed that. And he said, that's fine. I'm a musician. He played guitar, and he said, yeah,
Oh,
and I do the
nice.
same thing. And I said, okay, as long as that's okay, I'll do that. As it turns out,
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I got real serious into it. Again, kind of like, you have to remember this was about the time that Windows was coming out and all that. It had come out, like Windows 3.1 and all that. So the networking and computers and all that and Seattle was the epicenter of it all.
At what point in time I say that you start entering into the writing and directing?
That came late. I mean, so backtrack a little bit. I in this company that I was telling you about. I promise I won't linger there too long. But again, it was a burgeoning field. The company that I worked for had one office. When I left there, it had 6 offices in 6 states. And the value of the company had gone up 100-fold. So that gives you an idea what kind of growth we're talking about. So I started off as a technician where there was a bunch of what they call fitters, pipe fitters and all that. They're all union, and I was this young techie dude, and they all hated me. But I ended up becoming the chief technical officer of this company, and built the 6-city network and all this stuff, right? So I also was the chairman of a couple of nonprofit or industry associations having to do with all this stuff and all that. So bottom line is I ended up having to write, which is where we were going. And so I took some writing classes
Oh, okay.
and all that because I had to write some articles. I wrote articles in industry magazines and all that sort of stuff, and wrote up lots and lots of big proposals and all sorts of writing of all kinds, everything probably but scripts. But, meanwhile, I'm acting a lot. And so you're seeing, as you know, as an actor, you see a lot of scripts, right? And um, so between those, I, became a lot more comfortable with writing. But I didn't start writing scripts. I've written, it's funny because, everybody, the great American novel they're going to write and all that. I started writing a couple that I wanted to get down on paper, novels, but I literally actively quit. And the reason is I thought, writing a big novel or things like that, I'll do that later. I'll do that when I can't do this other stuff. I'm going to do the stuff that, takes some
Yeah.
physicality and things like that, and so I kind of didn't write for a while, and then writing just became a necessity. We had made a couple of movies. Jonathan Holbrook with Chronicle Factory wrote and directed, and Dave Schechter and I worked with to make a couple of feature films and several shorts and all that. And he had written them, and I looked at that and said, yeah, you know what? I could do that. I mean, I can do that. So between the two of those things, that's what got me started. And then when uh, Dave and I started DayNight Pictures, the goal from day one was to make features. To make the plan still is to make a couple of features a year. And so we started looking at shorts and started looking at scripts and all that. And Dave's a funny character in that Dave really loves props. And so he has a ton of props. I mean, and when I say props, I'm not talking about a rubber bat. I'm talking about he has a fully functioning police car, and he has a fully functioning ambulance, and he has enough uniforms and guns to outfit a small police department, and so and amongst a lot of other things. And so we started looking at a lot of scripts, and I looked at all these and thought, well, could probably make some of these, but it's going to increase our budget. And so it was out of necessity. I ended up writing a couple of shorts, is where it started, to fit the people and the props that we had. And in fact, part of the plan for DayNight Pictures was we were going to make a short first, test out all of our equipment, because we ended up with new camera and lighting and everything equipment. So we wanted to check that out. And then we had a small team of people, check them out, and make sure everything works as planned. We did that. We did the first short, and that all worked, but we didn't do much on the back end, on the producing side, on the scheduling and call sheets and, that kind of stuff, contracts and things. And so we made another short and concentrated on all that. And it's funny because I was writing both shorts, and I wrote the shorts, quite honestly, not even to be great stories, but to do all the things we wanted to do, to test, we got to have this kind of shot in there. We got to do this, and so that's what those shorts were all about. They ended up winning some awards anyway. But that was it. So at the end of that, we're ready to do a feature. Same sort of process. I stopped counting at reading 60 scripts. And some of them were bad, some of them were good, but none of them I could get done with the budget we had. If I had $1 million, I'd make, I think I could make a great movie out of several of these, but I didn't. And so after a lot of trials and tribulations, Dave and I both decided, we sat around, thought of ideas, and started elaborating on it, and then I just ended up writing it. And I'm going to end up, for the same reason, we're going through that process now. For the same reason, I'm going to write the next one too. So it's not like I have to do it, or I look forward to the day when I don't have to do all of the things that I'm doing.
Sure.
We talked in the past in editing and call sheets and scheduling and everything else, prop master, everything. So I look forward to the day when I don't have to do all of those things. But at the same time, what happens is the industry's changing. I'll be straight up. Some of the money's coming out of it. And so if you have a small team of people that are highly talented, that can do multiple things, that can be in front of the camera and behind the camera, that can run sound when needed and do, whatever, you can end up with a higher quality at a lower cost, to make a long story short. And the good news is, with the technology becoming more available, you actually can do that now, because the cost of cameras and lights and things like that, and jibs and all that, they're still expensive. Everybody complains, but they're a lot less than they used to be. So that is one of the impediments that's been removed.
Where did you come up with the DayNight Productions name? Where did that come from?
We were shooting the short, and we were trying to get it done in a short amount of time. And so we were shooting during the day and during the night.
Okay. I was just curious because on the slate it says day night, and I thought, I wonder if that's where they got it. But okay, that makes sense. How do you finance your films?
The last one we did, it was mainly an investor who's wished to remain silent, but they put up the bulk of the funding. And then we do things a little different than some, sort of a production thing. We own everything, so we don't do any rentals. I won't say we'll never do that, but we have a 3-camera setup and lights and jibs and cranes
Nice.
and I have a DJI Inspire 2, $15,000 drone that'll do 6K RAW, and all the cameras we do we'll do 6K RAW. So, and then all the editing and all that sort of stuff. So we try very hard not to rent things out to keep the cost down. And then Dave and I, and we have another sound guy, Roy. We're all part of the production team, so we don't pay ourselves. We don't do any of that. We do pay. We take actors sort of one at a time. Some of them in the feature we paid, and some of them we didn't. It depends sort of on the skill level and the role and things like that. So kind of that new model that people do. And basically try to keep the cost down.
Two questions. Are the shorts available so that the audience can see them? Can you send me a link?
They right now, but they will be here coming up very quickly because we had to get through all the film festival stuff, even the ones we don't win, because that's the deal. You can't show it before that. I wouldn't get too excited about those. I look at those now, and again, the reason we made them, it's funny because the second short, it sort of ends without an ending. um, and the reason is, again, the reason we did it was to test everything, and I was writing and all that, and Dave was chomping at the bit to go on the special in the second one. And he said, well, what all you got to do? And I said, well, I got to do an ending and all that. And he said, I thought you had all the shots and all the things you want to do. I said, I do, but you still got to come up with an ending. And he goes, why? We're just doing this to test everything out. And I said, well, yeah, okay. I guess so. Um,
Did that film go to festivals?
It did. And it won. It won almost everything. I mean, it got some sort of award in almost everything we did.
Wow.
Yeah. I think he submitted it in 12 festivals that were. What happened? Well, anyway, 12 festivals, and I think we won 10 of them. We got 10 of them. The thing he did wrong was that he submitted to some that were a long way out and didn't know it. He thought, so that's what we're waiting for, so we're still waiting on a couple of them.
I can relate.
Yeah. That was by mistake.
Now, with the shorts you're creating and you're directing, I'm assuming you're directing these shorts as well?
First one I did not direct. I sort of co-directed it on the first one. The second one I did direct.
Okay. And then are you also directing yourself in front of the camera?
I am. That's difficult because we're doing multitasking and all that. And so I'm running camera, and obviously I can't do that. So I had an assistant director who was DP, who was running things while I was in front of the camera. And that was actually all three of them. But in the feature, I'm in front of the camera quite a bit. I'm going to try really hard next time on this next one. I originally wrote one of the parts for me because, again, I'm an actor, and that's part of the reason we're doing all this, right? But I thought, that is a lot. And one of the things that I wish I could do more of is, because there's a lot of technical things you're doing as a director too, especially if you're sort of director / DP / sound recorder / lighting, everything else, that there's a lot to do. And so what I was afraid of is not being able to spend as much time with the actors getting the performance I want. And so this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the part that I'm writing for myself and write it for somebody else and just direct on this one.
I can relate. That's what I was thinking of the next film I do. The same situation.
Well, if you can imagine this last one, I mean, we got it. We sailed through it and it all went well. I ended up, because some people dropped out and all that, I ended up doing most of the producing. So I did all of the scheduling. Dave and I did all of the, production stuff, getting locations and all that sort of stuff. I did all the call sheets and the last calls every night for the next day while I was copying over
Yeah.
footage from that day, and and do the call sheets, the last calls for the next day. I did all the call sheets, but the last calls for the next day, and then get up early and load everything up and get out and do the next. And we did that for 28 days. So we shot the whole thing in 28 days. But it was
Wow.
a slog. It was about 3 hours of sleep a day for 28 days. So
Which film is this that
Finding
you're talking
Estrella
about?
is the one that's in post right now.
Oh,
Yeah. You can
nice. All right. Well, we're looking forward to see that.
And it's a little different. It's not a horror film. It is a mystery. It's a murder mystery with some twists.
So how do you navigate different mindsets from your role as an actor, director, and writer during the production? Are you able to kind of switch the hats? And are you looking at it from an actor's perspective, or are you looking at it from a director's perspective?
Um, well, for me, by the time I get to directing, I keep telling everybody I have to be. Well, I'm a fairly organized person, not obsessively, but I'm fairly organized. Um, there's a story I tell that I was a technician, right, and so I would go out in this controls company and fix things. When I first started doing it, my van with all the tools and test equipment and all that sort of stuff was about 3 feet high and stuff and not very well organized. But you do that a while and all of a sudden you can't find the thing you're looking for. You go back and get another one and end up with 3 of them because you can't find any of them and all that. You learn to get organized because it's the easiest thing to do. If I keep saying, if you're lazy, you get organized because it's easier, in the end. And I tell people, as far as
Yeah.
being a director, I'm not good enough not to be organized. I have to be organized because I'm just not good enough to, just wing it. Right. So by the time you get to shooting, I've got shot lists. I've got, shooting scripts. I've got, everything. I've also, all of the equipment is what I call putting kits. So each camera is in its own case, but has all of its own stuff, every little cable and handle and everything else that goes with it. And everything, whether that's lighting or jibs or this and that, has a kit. And the reason is because I've been on 100 shoots where somebody forgot a cable or a light or a bag or something, and or you don't
Yeah.
have redundant stuff. You don't, a cable quit working and now you're in Enumclaw and you have to find some place that'll sell you a cable, on a Sunday, that kind of.
Right.
Yeah. And so I first of all made everything in kits and then made it all modular. I have these disconnects that go on the cameras to where the camera can come off of a tripod and go click right on the jib. And they aren't the plate kind,
Yeah. Quick
they're a
release.
twist kind of thing. And so everything that we have, as far as camera stuff, so Dana Dolly, jibs, all that stuff is all quick disconnect. Because I'm sure you've seen this also, where you're, as an actor, you're sitting around for an hour while they, redo the cameras, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so trying to do all of that, try to speed things up. That's the whole thing. So by the time I get out there, the whole goal for me as an actor is that between the shot lists and all that and everybody understanding, because that's the other part of it, is everybody in this small crew knows where everything is, so they don't have to waste time or ask me or things like that. And so a short conversation the night before with my assistant director, who's also the DP, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm trying to do. So anyway, by the time I get out there, the whole goal is that I can concentrate on the days that I'm in front of camera concentrate more on acting. Never quite works out that way because, there's always something, but I don't do,
Yeah.
quite method acting. I do a little bit of that. And, it sounds oxymoronish that you can do a little bit of method, but, more Meisner kind of thing is my acting style. That's kind of how I learned. And so I pull up, what I do is start off kind of figuring out the character and pulling up from my experience what that character would be feeling and all that sort of stuff. And so I think about all that. Then I memorize the lines. Then I think about, those things that bring those emotions while I do the lines. So that's sort of my process that I go through. Unless there's accents or, things like that. That's what I do. So I do all that work beforehand, just like that. So hopefully if I've done my homework, I can pull that up,
Are you still taking workshop classes and stuff as you're going through it, or do you feel like you have that solid foundation now?
I do. I haven't taken classes in quite some time now. I keep thinking about doing it again. I feel like I have a good foundation. I have 100 books that I go look into again, almost like an encyclopedia at times. And then there are things where,
Yeah.
I did some fighting classes recently because that came up in a movie, and some sword work where I had done some fun fighting a long time ago, but it was a long time ago, And so I took another class in
Cool.
that and in sword work. Because that was going to come up. So I took a class on site to go do that for a movie. Done several things for accents and languages and things like that. So, as things come up where I don't feel comfortable, I really love to learn. That's sort of my MO. That's what my motivation always is learning. And so I'm happy to do that. What's crazy is that I actually retired from my day job in 2018. And so I've been retired and doing movies and this and that and music and all that since then. I'm so dang busy. I wish I had about 100 hours in a day and about 20 days in a week, to do everything.
But you're doing what you want. That's the key right there,
It
right?
is. I mean, like I said, there's some things where I'm doing post right now in a movie. And I'm doing not just the rough or anything like that, but I'm sound sweetening, color, VFX, the whole bit, overlays, all of that. And there are times, when I wish I could hand some of that stuff off to somebody else. But, at the same time, I'm always learning something, so that's probably why I keep doing it.
I'm stoked. So my second question was about editing. Like you said, it'd be nice to have someone to hand this off. Do you feel, is there a reason why you don't hand it off? Is it about control, or is it creativity and your vision, or what is it like? 'Cause I'm sure there's editors out there that are looking for
Yeah, I mean,
something to edit.
it's a real combination of things because there is the cost. That's part of it. The the things that I'm doing happen to have some CGI in them, or not really CGI, but overlays and things like that. Television overlays, watch overlays, phone overlays, all this stuff, right? And it gets cumbersome doing that. And in fact, I've tried actually to hand that off to somebody, but let me give you an example. This is shot in 6K B-RAW, Blackmagic RAW. Okay. So if you give that to somebody else, if they're not, and you're editing in RAW naturally, right? So just bringing in RAW and doing it. If they don't know how to deal with B-raw, especially 6K B-raw, which, chews up a machine pretty good, right? Then they want you to export it into ProRes or something like that, right? So if you go to Fiverr or something, even on the simple stuff of just, okay, I want this clock face overlaid on this watch, or a name overlaid on a phone calling someone or something, right? That happens to be moving around. It gets to be more trouble than it's worth. It's easier to do it, than it is to have somebody else do it, unless they're all set up with you, and all on the same page. And I haven't found that person to do that. Then the second part of it is editing is a lot of the story. You know what I mean? How you edit it has a lot to do with the story. The third thing is the way I shoot. Again, I'm not, I'm not good enough to be like some directors where they take one shot and then they're good. And next, all that. I end up taking multiple shots for various reasons. And so which shot you choose, and all that becomes a big deal. Which clip and how you cut it and all that sort of stuff. Keeping true to the story. On the one that I'm working on now, there is a lot of dream sequences and flashbacks where you're looking at the same footage that you saw before, but from a different angle, or seeing a little more of it, or sooner of it or later of it. And it's also in a flashback, so it's color different and so forth and so on. And trying to relay all that to somebody. I mean, I honestly, I wish I had a really good editor that I had a lot of shorthand with, that knew exactly what I was talking about, what I wanted. But until I do, I end up doing it. And it is kind of cool to learn. Again, my thing. We had that conversation before, but I had this epiphany, and I learned that the reason I do all these different things is because my motivation is not necessarily be the best person on the planet to anything, playing golf or whatever else. It's I want to learn things. And when I feel like I've learned it, then I'm kind of ready to go do something else. And the good news about filmmaking is you're never going to learn it all. It's the minute you learn it all, it's all changed. And that's how rapidly it's changing. Maybe in 100 years it won't, but right now it is. So there is also satisfaction in, like, okay, well, now I know how to track things. I can automatically track something and put text over it, or now I know chromatic overlays and can do green screens and this, that, and the other. It's all kind of like a layer cake. You learn little bits at a time as you need them. So
For all the tech nerds out there, you're editing 6K B-roll, and well, B-raw, actually it's raw. What are you pushing with what kind of machine do you have? What's your processor? How much RAM do you have?
I forget the processor now, and I should know it, but it's a CMC computer. It's actually a video game machine. That's what it was. I mean, it's as a start, right? But It's got a 8070 GPU in it, so not the latest, but close to the latest, with 12 megs of RAM. So it's healthy there. It's got 128 gigs of RAM.
128 gigs of RAM. Okay, there you go. That answers a lot of issues.
Yeah, in the machine. And it's got 5 fans and and all that happy stuff. I've got SSD. I've got, the way I do it is for shooting and redundancy and all that. I have external USB drives, so I have some are 12 gigabytes some are 16, but I have a number of those so that I can pass them out and use them and all that. And they're powered drives, so they're pretty fast, but they're hard drives, so they're mechanical hard drives. But I have in the machine itself, I have a combination of 2 terabyte SSD that the operating system, all that goes on. Then a 4 terabyte SSD that is my applications, the D drive, if you will, and all that. And then I have an 8 terabyte SSD that is my project SSD. And the reason and that's been trial and error. Quite frankly, I had a lot of problems before that because if you're trying to do big stuff like that, and you get slower drives, you literally will have errors and things like that. And so I've learned it's been a process to put the application here and the operating system here, but I'll put them all in the machine right on the motherboard and have them be really fast SSD. Yeah, so
That's amazing.
I also have a laptop, a gaming laptop that's it's got an NVIDIA GPU in it. But it's slower. And the reason I got that desktop is to be able to really stream. In a pinch, this will work other than having, 15 effects layered on some clip or something like that. It tends to bog down. But if I needed to, your general stuff, 4K or 1080 or a regular, just cutting stuff up with few effects, this laptop that we're speaking on will scream through it. And it's also my backup in case something goes awry.
How do you handle, now that you've directed making films, how do you handle constructive criticism either in your acting or your films or your writing?
Well, if you've done acting for any length of time, I think you pretty much have to learn that. That is a tough thing to learn when you start because you're constantly getting no and you're constantly getting you're doing it wrong, constantly. So you got to get a pretty thick skin pretty quickly to be an actor because, like I said before, is that the bad thing about an actor, just being an actor all by yourself, and the great thing about a filmmaker is the opposite. The bad thing about an actor is you're constantly waiting for somebody else to say yes. You can't do anything unless somebody else says yes. You're sitting around on your couch till somebody says yes, you have a part, right? You could do all kinds of things and, post on Instagram and, show up for auditions and this and that. But until somebody says you got something, you're doing nothing. So, and then each director has their own vision, and as you probably have seen, directors are vastly different. Some of them have this crystal clear picture of every inflection, dialect, word, pause, everything, that they want you to do. And when they tell you to do something like that, you do it, right? That's their thing, right? Others, they either are completely hands off or somewhere in the middle, right? And so, bottom line, though, you're getting criticism all the time, so you better learn to handle that and take it objectively, because that's the director's job. That's and your job as the actor is to give the director what they want as far as a performance goes. So you come with your ideas, but your job is to do it the way they do it. So you learn that. And as far as a director goes, the way I look at directing is, there's definitely art to it, but the art in a way is kind of like the art of playing chess. Being a director in the technical parts of it, especially, is very calculating. It's very calculated. It's about pulling off, half of it is ideas. Here's my idea. I want to do a dolly zoom on this person, right? But then you have to pull that off. You have to go do it. And when you're shooting something, there's never enough time. There's always something that's not the way you expected it to be, and pulling it off. And when I go learn about directors, and or at least a lot of directors and all that, and the famous movies they've shot and all that. What you come to find is it's this combination of art and their ability to pull it off. And you go to find out they had a lot of hardships. They had, people issues and equipment issues and time issues and problems, all kinds of problems, but they pulled it off anyway. And so, that's a big part of it is being able to just pull it off. So when it comes to criticism and all that, my goal, I hope that I had no ego at all. That's my goal, is to have no ego at all, because my whole goal, and I tell everybody this, I'm not here to make money. I'm not here to make a name. I'm not here for any of that. What I want to do is I want to make a movie that I look at the end and say, yeah, that's a good movie. I like that, So
Yeah.
taking
Art.
criticism, yeah. And what I tell everybody is, look, I want all your criticism. I want your input and all that. I can't guarantee I'm going to take it. I can't guarantee I'm going to agree with you, but I want it all the time.
Yeah.
And there are times when I take it and times when I don't. When I have a real clear picture in my head what I want, and their criticism is not it, and so.
How do you direct other actors? You having an acting background, I'm sure it helps to kind of see that vision and understand what they're going through. But as far as when you're writing a script and you're saying this, this character is going to take 3 steps forward and do this and then this, are you writing those details, or are you letting the actor kind of find those nuances?
Both. There are times when I do it very explicitly, because you're trying to get a shot, and that sort of stuff. And so when I do a shooting script and all that, I'll write notes in there on certain circumstances, on all that. Because you need the angles and you need, certain things to pull it off, right? And so I'll write that in so everybody knows, the actor, the DP, everybody. To me, that's another thing you can do to speed things up, because you're telling everybody involved, from the gaffer to the actors to the DP, this is what I want. And I don't do storyboards, but it's my way of doing storyboards. Essentially, I'm explaining it. And getting kind of job done.
Do you work with your own set of crew, or are you just kind of looking for other people, your set of actors? Like, do you have your basically group that you always go to when you're going to do your next project?
We have a small crew in as far as behind the camera stuff of crew, the actual crew. So we have that. So we have sound, DP, assistant director, myself, gaffer. Although gaffer just joined the military, so we're looking for a new one of those. And then Dave is prop master and all that. So we have that. Always looking for new people that can add something. And, people come and go, sometimes. And so having a bench is good. I like to teach. So if somebody's interested in not, bogging the whole thing down, I enjoy somebody coming up, teaching them at least what I know. Not like I know everything, but, I know I enjoy learning. So I also enjoy teaching because I know how that feels. Yeah. So that's what we work with. And as far as actors, for me, it starts with the story. And then I tend to write around people, knowing that they're going to be in it. So, for instance, the female lead in the one that I'm writing, I've already talked to, right? And to me, people say don't do that and let them bring it and all that. I like to do that because you get to know, and sometimes I have them do out of their own character, out of their natural personality and all that, do against the grain. because I know that's going to challenge them, and I feel like I'll get something out of it that way. And then other ones I'll do it with their character because that's just their natural personality. So the female lead I've already talked to. I was going to, Dave is one of the people in it. Obviously, he knows about it. I was going to be one, decided, as I told you, I think I'm just going to direct this one, not be in it. So another actor that I've worked with before, he's out of Ohio. I talked to him just the other day and ran it past him and asked if he'd be in it. He said, "Yep, I'm all in." He was in one of my shorts, so I know him, but he can play the character really well. So I'm going to tweak the character for him. He is also a comedian, and so I'm gonna. He's a kind of bust your chops sort of comedian. So I'm going to write some things in like that, just for his natural personality. So that's kind of how I do it on acting. There's some actors that I want to work with that I haven't before. You probably know of Robert Lusardo. He's well, if you don't, you can look him up on. He's been in a million things.
Yeah.
He has a lot of tattoos, sleeves up his neck, all that. Um, I have worked with him several times. I really like him as a person. And I thought about in fact, I had a long conversation with him and asked him what has he not done that he thought he could crush, but he hasn't had an opportunity to. And he told me being vulnerable because he's always playing the badass.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I wrote up a 3-page treatment for a story for him, and he loved it. But he doesn't come. Yeah, well, he's not that expensive, but anyway, I hope to work with him in the future on that one.
Going back to your decision on you wrote a character for yourself, but then there was a tipping point where you said you decided to push it to someone else. What was that reasoning? Was it just because you had so many different hats to wear?
Yeah, from the experience of this last one, I had a few too many hats. A few too many hats to be comfortable. So I was stretched a little thin. We got done. It worked fine. I mean, in as far as the production went, I think everybody would probably say it went flawlessly. And it really did. I mean, we had one cancel day that we moved to the end, but that was it. That was it. And that was the
Yeah.
venue. And that was, but everybody moved, picked up, went to the end. And again, 27-day shoot became 28, and it all worked well. But like I was saying, as a director, I would love to have a little bit more time to spend with the actors. I do some other things. I write a whole, depending on the character and all that, all the main characters, I write a bio for them. I write a sort of a history for them. So the last one, each one was about 3 pages. So where they're born, how they grew up, what they were doing right before this, all that, their family, different things like that to try to help the actors get some idea. So yeah, I would love to have some more time with the actors. As it is,
Yeah.
I try to do everything I can beforehand. I write big bios on all the characters that start off where they're born, how they grew up. Yeah.
That's very kind of you because a lot of directors don't do that.
Well, I don't even think of it as kind. No, I appreciate it as an actor, but it's like a football team. You're trying to win the game, and in this case, winning the game is making a good film. I think that helps the actors make a good character. If there's lots of actors that'll tell you this, lots of acting instructors that'll tell you this. Don't worry about the words. Don't worry about the words. Um, it's all about the character and your emotions and all that. Then do the words. And people will ask, well, how do you want this done? This and that. If you know the character, then how you do it becomes obvious, for me, to me. I mean, you'll get people that want something different and all that, but I think if you know the character, delivering the lines is easy.
Knowing that you have a partner in your production team, uh, DayNight Pictures, right? How do you handle different opinions or creative conflicts?
That's a
Rock,
good
paper,
one.
scissors?
Yeah. Well, there's few of us. And honestly, when it comes to the creative side of it, it hasn't been a problem at all. And the reason is because we get along really well. So that's the start of it. And we bat around ideas and they sort of gel together. And the way it's gone so far is that everybody sort of has their lane and does their thing. Um, and the way it's worked out again so far is once we come up with the outline of the story, so we know beginning, middle, end, and characters, and the basic plot lines and all that, then I end up doing the writing. So I write it all up and all that, and then um, I'll take all kinds of input from the actors and all that. And in fact, where again, I've written a big bio on each actor, and Dave's done this. Other people have done this too. In fact, can't think of anybody in a major role that hasn't done this, where they come back to me and say, this line doesn't feel comfortable. This just doesn't seem like something I would say, I said, well, okay, here's what we need to get done plot wise. Here's who your character is. What would you say? And they'll say, well, here's what I would do. And you say, okay, let's do that. So, cause you're all on the same team, and it's all about that. If I agree, I'm not married to anything, if there's something better, then we'll do it that way. The same thing goes on shots and, how you're doing stuff. I've got complete shot lists of what equipment is needed for each shot, what the framing is, the shot, the angle, all that stuff. But somebody comes up and says, hey, how about this? What often happens for us is that, especially on that side of it, on the behind the camera side of it, is I've got a shot list with all that, and somebody will come up and say, "Hey, what do you think about doing this handheld?" It's, well, okay, let's do it both. I don't want to give it up for what I had in mind, but I'm happy to add what you have in mind, and then we'll see. We'll see how it looks, So there's a lot of that.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who wants to excel just like you? I mean, they're actors, they want to start directing and writing all simultaneously. What's the best thing you can give them? What's the tips?
I ain't famous, so I don't know about the Excel thing, but do it. That really is, and again, goes the Nike thing. Just do it. But seriously, I mean, I
We are
really,
not sponsored by Nike, by the way.
yeah, sponsored by Nike.
Not
Thank
yet.
you. Um, that I've seen this, and a couple of people have said this, as far as being a filmmaker, right, in general, and I found that to be great advice for almost anything, except for maybe tightrope walking. Um, you know, but just start, just do it. If you have any sort of analytical mind, you can figure stuff out, right? But even, so as an example, as an actor, okay, as an actor, what I would do is I would try to get on sets, period. And I mean that as an actor, not even as a director. Just get on sets because, as a beginning actor, you learn so much. And there's a bunch of practical stuff too. Don't spike the camera. Where's my mark? All that, cut is cut and only the director cuts. And, there's all that stuff. but you can watch other people act. You can watch how this works, right? And so there's a ton of stuff to learn. And the same thing goes with filmmakers. That's why I think a lot that you see a lot of actors become directors, because they just learn so much, and they get it by osmosis. They see how it all works, right? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I did it as far as directing goes, is just seeing it so many million times, right? And then asking questions too, because I'm just a curious sort. And so why do they do that? And that. So just start. And literally now, I just saw as an example that Blackmagic just came out with the camera app for the Android phone. They've had it for the iPhone for a long time. And I used it on this last film actually for a small bit where we had to have a camera down in a hole, and couldn't fit
Nice.
anything. So, but
Yeah.
just as an iPhone, with this camera app, you can do depth of field, you can do color, you can do LUTs, you can do all kinds of things that you. So right now, there's reasons for good cameras and things like that, but you could make a film. You could certainly make a short. You could make a film with an iPhone, and that would teach you probably that and YouTube and an online course about how to direct and all that and produce and things like that. You would learn, if you haven't done it before, your brain's going to be stuffed full of stuff you've learned doing it. And I think we talked before, and a long time ago I read a book. A friend of mine who made the same case to me about all kinds of things. This is a long time ago, but playing out in a band. Okay, stop practicing, get out and play in a band. And he said the way to do it is just to do it. And he gave me a book called "You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bicycle from a Book," and it's the name of the book. But that was the basic premise of the book, which is some things are just far easier to learn by doing them than they are by reading about it or anything else. And so I just do it, just start. And the other thing I would say is don't think of it as your manifesto or your opus or anything like that. Just do something. And when you first do it, it's going to be bad. That's just it's just like riding a bike. You're going to fall over at first, and it's by repetition and learning. You say, okay, well, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And you do it over and over, and that's how you do it. So don't put too much into it. I mean, don't put too much emotion into it, I'll say, but just start, make something, and then make another one, and then make another one. You look at Scorsese, you look at Spielberg, you look at all those. There was a recent sort of biopic on Spielberg. I forget the name of the movie, but he was making movies on Super 8 when he was 9 years old. So
I'm assuming you're editing on DaVinci Resolve, right?
I have DaVinci and I have Premiere, both. I actually right now I do more with Premiere, and the
Okay.
reason is, but I keep wanting to go over to DaVinci. I have it, and I played with a little bit, but I've had Premiere for so long that I have a whole bunch of plugins. That's where it starts, right? And I know it so well, and I have the whole Adobe suite. So I have
Yes.
linked After Effects and Audition and all that, so I can ping pong back and forth really quickly. Which DaVinci is as good as it is now. It isn't quite as good, and when you have to do something like that, it bogs down pretty quickly. And you can do it, but it's slower, and it's improving. So I keep thinking it's going to be the next one. I'll go to DaVinci. And all that. And I've done some training on it while I'm waiting for stuff to render and things like that. But I still have the whole nodes thing to get through. Yeah, yeah,
It's a learning curve.
yeah. Yeah. So right now it's mainly Premiere. I've done a few small things on DaVinci, but and that's sort of the plan is to get over there because I use Blackmagic cameras and there's
Yeah.
some simplicity there too. So for Blackmagic, so I can add all the data for each clip and all that, so I can do all the stuff there. Um,
Yeah.
so it's not cumbersome at all that way, but yeah, both, but mainly Premiere.
Do you color correct in Premiere?
I do. I have another plugin called Cinema Grade that's awesome that I use for color.
Well, Earl, I want to thank you again for coming on here on the Downing Cut. I do have one last question for you, and that is with all the technology, and I know you're going to give me a good answer on this one because you're a tech guy. With all the technology and equipment and production things that you have, what is your favorite and why?
Boy, oh boy, that's tough. That's a really tough one because they all, each one is its own little world, from 32-bit float on sound and all that. Um, I think the answer has to be software. And the reason is because it's changing more rapidly than everything else. As much as cameras and all that are changing a lot, the software, especially with AI being added to it, I have as a simple example a set of plugins called RX10 that is for sound. That's just for sound. But now I can use a plugin to automatically do noise reduction to get, that will analyze my clip and do noise reduction, clip reduction, sweetening and all that, all in one swell hoop, and all that. And
RX10. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And it's a whole suite of stuff, but then they have one plugin that rides over all of them and they just haven't listened to your stuff and it can fix a bunch of problems and all that. And sweeten the sound. And, there are plugins for stabilizing there's all kinds, that stuff
Yeah.
is changing so rapidly. I mean, as we all know that we're seeing with Dolly and things like that, to take a picture and then expand the background or replace the background or this and that. You're just starting to see that now with video. But I have plugins to do that too, to be able to smooth or take something that's 24 frames as an example and make it slow motion when it wasn't
Yeah.
shot in slow motion, and make it nice.
Topaz, right?
What's that? Yeah, Topaz Labs. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that. And that, all of that is relatively recent stuff, right? And there's new stuff coming out all the time. So, me, I like to learn. And also, it just, what you can do, the flexibility that all that gives you is just crazy, Um,
You had me just think of a new question. As an actor, this will be my last question. As an actor, do you feel threatened with AI?
no. Well, I kind of yes and kind of no. I mean, I see a day when um, when you can literally make a movie without actors. Where you can uh, record somebody's voice, for 10 minutes, and then do a 3D scan of them and some other things, their gait, walking, and things like that, and then you don't need them after that. So it is a brave new world there. I think that's a ways off to make that, realistic enough, although that's coming quickly. But um, I think all of that is true with everything. So it isn't just acting or anything else. It's really funny. So I've been dealing with OpenAI, which does ChatGPT, right, since 2012. And so it's a
Wow.
big thing to everybody, but it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, I've seen this for a long, long time now. What happened with people is that they thought that robotics was going to be the thing that takes everybody's job, right? You know, that you're going to have some robot that'll be able to dig ditches and things like that. They didn't think that the intellectual work was going to be the thing that computers took. You know, that it's going to take the doctor's job or the writer's job or the songwriter or, you know, that kind of thing, or the artist, or, you know, that. And what it showed is that, but I have been reading, I like to read. Um, and it gives me ideas for stories, of which I have a great one, by the way, but I won't tell you what it is, but, but, um, I've been reading about this for a very long time that, AI, what they call generalized AI, it won't be, but it might be right now in some lab somewhere, but it'll be out in the open in the next 5 years, maybe, where you have a machine that is, in essence, a synthetic human brain, in the sense of you don't teach it large language stuff. You don't have to feed it 4 bazillion pictures and all that to learn to be an artist and all that. It's essentially learns just how a human learns, you know. But it has access to all the information in the world, and that will be smarter than people. And there's a term they call that the singularity, but
Right.
that's
I think it's
coming.
called Terminator.
Yeah, well, there's that's the pessimistic view of it. There's people that have the optimistic view of it.
Yeah.
But that's however you look at it, I defy anybody to, and you could argue of when that's coming, right? But I defy anybody to tell me that's not coming.
Right.
That's happening. The good news is there's a lot of people. One of the authors I like a lot is a guy named Ray Kurzweil, who's the head of AI for Google. So he's not nobody, right? But he also believes, as an example, just like you have eyeglasses on right now, that we will have prosthetics, sensors basically that can read your mind. And so you'll be able to think Google searches, and you'll be able to just get an upgrade to know German or how to fly a helicopter or, anything else like that. And so there's what he calls it, the neocortex, the new cortex, the new brain. It's going
Hmm.
to expand by 1,000,000-fold the intelligence of humans, which is a great story when you think about that. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but being in the monetary world we live in, that's not going to be free. So the
Right.
people with money will be able to get the Google upgrade, and poor people won't. So
Well, it's like the Google Glass, but it sounds like it'll be inside your head.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if
Yeah.
you can imagine for a second, I just think as a filmmaker, as a story creator, if I mean they've already done this, so this is not super science fiction. They've done this in labs now where you wear a cap and I wear a cap. You think red cup, and I know you're thinking red cup. Okay, that's done.
Yeah.
That was done 10 years ago. Okay, so I don't know exactly what they're working on that way now, but I know they're obviously far advanced than that, right? Well, if you can do that, that's telepathy. It's human telepathy,
Yeah.
but it's human made. And if you can do that in a more advanced way, think of it like Facebook, where I decide you're a friend, and so now all of a sudden you can think what I'm thinking, what I'm thinking, or maybe you can know some of what I'm thinking, but not all of it. That kind
Yeah.
of, you know. Um, Imagine how that would make things different. So, and that's
Yeah.
that's not. that's not super fantasy anymore. That's going to happen. So
What do you
good
think about the
story.
Vision Pro?
I, I haven't gotten one, and I mean I'm an early adopter of a lot of things. My whole house
Yeah.
is full of automation of everything. There isn't anything in my uh, house that I can't have Alexa do. There she goes. So, um, my wife calls her my girlfriend. We'll
Yeah.
start my car, turn off the lights, up and down the temperature, turn on the television, change the channel, all that stuff. But I haven't bought that one yet. Um, I think it's amazing, and I think it's the future. It's 1.0, and it's kind of big and cumbersome. Um, but what it does is pretty amazing. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. And have you saw I forget the model number, but so it's not actually 3D, as you would go to a movie theater and wear glasses 3D, but it is when you film something for it, you're doing it from two perspectives, right?
Right.
So it is 3D like kind of, but it's not actually 3D. But in order to make content for that, and you notice Black Magic came out with a camera very specifically for that.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think as it gets smaller and the next iteration, the iterations, I think a lot of people are going to copy that. I tested it out, and just the concept of being able to sit there and you can do this, that, and the other thing, and you've got a screen up watching a movie, and it stays where it's at, and you can look around it, and then have a Mac screen up down here too. Um, it's pretty amazing. It is pretty wild. Um, so yeah, I'm excited by it. It's new. I haven't bought one yet because it's $3,800. But
Right.
yeah,
I haven't even tested one yet, but I want to.
yeah,
The you know how they're making the iPhone now can actually film for the Vision Pro.
right,
I can't remember what it's called. Is it spatial video or something like that? It
yeah,
kind of reminds me of the volume. When the camera moves, that
yep,
aspect ratio kind of changes, which
yep,
makes me think that's what they're kind of doing
yep.
right there to kind of make it pop, right?
Well, and when you think about it, all that, that the volume is really, really interesting, but at the same time, I think they're going to end up later on. They won't even need the volume anymore.
Right.
Again, you're going to be able to do it all virtually, the whole
Yeah.
thing, virtually,
Yep.
um, without all the hardware. When the volume came out, I was super excited. And I saw that the documentary behind the Mandalorian. I don't know if you saw that, but they're
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
That's where I first saw the volume and all that. And I was both excited and depressed. Um, you know, because I saw that and I went, wow, that is just the coolest thing ever. And as an actor, it would be so cool to do that rather than a green screen and all that. So a combination of practical props and then this volume behind you. And then I thought, but I'm never going to be able to afford that.
Not yet.
Yeah. So that was the depressing part. But then I thought about it some more, and I was thinking that if you look about the new Apple thing, the part where it's scanning the inside of the goggles, it's scanning your face, and then it's putting them on the outside of the goggles, right? So imagine now you're wearing that as an actor, and imagine it's quite a bit smaller now, but so it's getting your facial expressions and all that, and you're seeing what would be the volume but without the volume. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah. So you're doing that, but it's now all of a sudden I can afford that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not depressed anymore.
I
Uh,
mean, it makes me think of if you just made a Vision Pro type device for your camera, right?
right.
And then it would project everything out there for you. and you have a
I don't
monitor. I
think you
mean,
need to do that.
but
So you can make a camera, right? That's for Vision Pro. Now imagine for a second now, you have, just CGI as an example. So the plugin that just removes the Vision Pro. So I'm shooting you. You have a Vision Pro on your head. It
right,
just
it just
removes
takes
the
it away.
Vision Pro. It just takes it out of the picture. The Vision Pro has been recording your face, right? It takes your expressions and all that. It replaces what the Vision Pro is with what the Vision Pro recorded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
All of a sudden, you don't need the volume anymore. And as
yeah.
an actor, I've seen the volume because that's what I'm looking at from the Vision Pro, right? I'm seeing the
Hmm.
dinosaurs. I'm seeing, the pyramids. I'm seeing the spaceships, all that stuff. I see it, so I can react to it. And the Vision Pro is recording my face, and the camera is recording the rest of me. And
Pretty awesome.
yeah, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the Vision, the big LED screen, you don't need it anymore.
No,
So yeah, so I
and it's
see,
less.
yeah,
Costs less than $3,000.
yeah, I see that happening. I see if you look at what Black Magic is doing, I think that's version one, and then it won't be long before the next version happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Apple knew all along. They had to have known that the Vision Pro was a sort of almost a beta model. I don't know how many of
Yeah.
them they sold, but for $4,000, that you're not going to sell. That everybody's not going to want one. But the same thing happened with iPhones too. Combination of
Exactly.
cheaper, they got better, both all at once. They started a whole new category. The whole smartphone thing didn't even exist.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, I
All
mean,
right.
yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before. Filmmaking, there's between the two halves of it, which acting is all about emotions and emoting and trying. There's some technical aspects to it, but it's trying to capture a story and emotion and human emotion and all that. And then the art and skill of making a film is very technical now. It is extremely technical, and between the two of those, and how quickly the filmmaking side of it is changing and how that affects your performance and everything else, because it does affect the acting. All of a sudden now you're going to be acting with some version of a Vision Pro on your head, looking at
Hmm.
dinosaurs, and all that. Um, I could live to be 1,000 and I've never learned it all. And that's, that's exciting to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
There's this. You never run out of more things to really
it.
accomplish and learn and
Yeah.
just kind of up your level. Yeah.
A buddy of mine that I worked with before, tech guy, he's thinking about retiring. He was worried about being bored. It's just, I had to, what? I said,
Yeah.
you're not, yeah, there's so many things to do. There's no, I can, there was another thing that Ray Kurzweil, the guy, the AI guy, he's made he's made himself famous by also becoming a futurist. To hear him say it, he's an inventor, but he said, I had to become a futurist because I was constantly inventing stuff that was 20 years ahead of its time. And so I
Yeah.
had to become a futurist to know what to invent and when to invent it and all that. But he's also, by also being a futurist and a technologist, he's become fairly famous by fairly accurately predicting technology future, and all that. One of the things that he predicts is that within like our lifetime, that we will have nanobots that will be able to go in your bloodstream, go in your brain, and record all of your thoughts, memories, and your personality, and
Holy
make
smokes.
make you virtual. And again, this isn't just some yahoo. This is a guy that has invented a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
when he says it, it's worth listening to. So I'm hoping they make it in time for before I croak. So
I'll have to look them up. Earl, we've almost been talking for 2 hours, but I know some of it's going to be edited out because of my daughter, so don't worry about that. But thank you so much. Where can people find your information, connect with you, your website? We're going to link that in the show notes, but go ahead and tell
so
us.
the website is daynightpictures.com. We also have a Facebook page, DayNight Pictures, and you can get a hold of me either one of those places.
And when do you happen to know when your film's going to be finalized and ready to go?
The $64,000 question. I don't know. We're about halfway through post now. So if I had to guess, it would be 6 months or so.
Okay.
I've got to run through it a bunch more times. And my process is I do more than what would be a rough edit, a lot more than what would be a rough edit, but not a complete edit. Not so part of it is colored, part of it's not. I kind of do stuff that I have questions about to make myself feel, yeah, that's going to work, kind of thing. And so some stuff done more than others, but I'm about 3/4 of the way through that. But then I have people look at it, and then we go through it several more times to clean it up, fix things, shorten it, lengthen it, do all that stuff. So I'd say about 6 months or so. And
All
we
right.
will
Well,
have we'll have a Northwest premiere, so we'll have an on-site premiere for it, maybe more than one theater showing. So last one we did one, but I think we may with Beloved Beast, but we may do 3 here just to get around the area so that people can see it. So
Yeah.
we'll. I haven't started marketing or any of that stuff. My thesis on that is get the film done, then do a marketing campaign. So we'll start the marketing campaign when the film's done or close to done.
Awesome. Well, we'll have you back on with the marketing campaign, and then we could talk about where your name came from. So we'll cover that. Thank you, Earl. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And have a good night.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.